He walked to work every day, to the cigar store he ran with his brother on Spark Street. Mark Abramson is his name, and it's the late 1930s. And Mark and his friend Dave Malott did the sorts of things young men do. Played sports, had fun, went out to dinner together.
He would pour salt on the table, and with his finger, he would draw a picture of a bird, or a person, or a banana or something, with his finger just to move the salt all around. That's how those things always stuck in my mind. He was able to do that.
And when Mark walked home after work, his young nephew, John Holtzman, would be waiting.
He would come home and we'd throw a baseball around or a football or something like that. So, you know, he was really my hero.
When war came, Mark joined the Royal Canadian Air Force, Dave Malott, the Army. Both went overseas, still the best of friends.
And we never once had a disagreement, not once.
In wartime London, Dave Malott met up with his friend again, and Mark was there when Dave met the woman he'd marry.
Well, the following week, I was with Marky, and we went to Woburn House, and there was my wife was there. And matter of fact, he took the first picture. But I never got it. I never got that picture.
But the war was waiting. In May 1944, Mark Abramson was serving as a navigator in Bomber Command of the Royal Air Force, flying aboard a Lancaster. The Lancaster had 4 propeller-driven engines, a normal crew of 7, and it was built for one purpose, to carry a big load of bombs to targets in occupied Europe or Germany. This is the only Lancaster still flying in Canada. Its wartime brothers flew at night.
They're very long missions, depending on the targets, which you would be reaching deep into German-occupied Europe. It is stressful. It is inside a cramped conditions, inside a very narrow-sided aircraft.
There are only a few places where you can stand up inside this Lancaster on display at the Canada Aviation Museum. Normally, you crawl. Just after 10 o'clock on the night of May 15, 1944, Lancaster ME-726 took off from England, carrying mines to be dropped off the German coast. I'm sitting where Mark Abramson would have sat. This is the navigator's position on a Lancaster. This small table would have been covered with pieces of paper and maps and pencils, all to enable him to plot a course to the target and then bring everybody back home. Over the North Sea, it was noisy and cold inside the Lancaster, the crew breathing oxygen that tasted of rubber from the masks they wore. Because of the noise, you could only talk over the intercom, and that was discouraged because all eyes were searching the darkness for a shadow or anything that might be a German night fighter. Suddenly it happens. Gunfire in the darkness. The Lancaster badly damaged. The 2 pilots fight for control. Denmark looms ahead. And at 1:35 in the morning, Lancaster ME-726 crashed just outside the village of Gamtofte. All aboard were killed, including Mark Abramson. Days later, a telegram brought news to Ottawa of death in Europe.
And I think the telegram, if I remember, and I can't remember, seemed to have come either in the late morning or around noon hour.
And John Holtzman remembers what his mother did that day when she learned of her brother's death.
She just stood by a window the rest of that day, just kind of staring out the window. And, you know, again, I was 15 at that time, and it was, you know, I couldn't really understand it, but then it, you know, it really hit me.
In Italy, it took weeks before Dave Malott found out his best friend was dead.
I saw a lot of people die, a lot. But he really struck me.
Decades later, John Holtzman went to Denmark, where his uncle and the rest of the crew are buried.
It was very emotional for me. We took some pictures. I was over with my wife, and we took some pictures and spent a half an hour kind of walking around and looking at it.
And in May of this year, the Danes put up their own memorial to the crew, including Mark Abramson.
Now, it was his second tour of duty. He had finished his first tour and he was on either the last or second last flight of his second tour, and then he would have been able to come home.
Serving in Bomber Command was dangerous. By war's end, over 55,000 young men had died in the bombers, 9,910 of them Canadians. Which looks like this. This is the Corral Center, filled with over 18,000 people. Now, imagine every second person you see here killed. Every second person. That was Canada's sacrifice in the night skies of World War II. That was Mark Abramson's sacrifice, too. The man who walked to work and went to war and left his life in a foreign field and his memory in Dave Malot's heart.
One of the nicest fellas you'd ever want to meet.
Norman Fetterley, CJOH News.